Hello lovely people and welcome to this year's eyeshadow palette ranking video. I did a video like this last year. I am going to leave that up in the cards for you if you would like to check that out. It was a real eyeshadow palette extravaganza because I bought a buttload of palettes in 2018. 2018 was the year that I tried a variety of new brands. I tried a whole ton of different formulas, different eyeshadow palettes. It was awesome. This year I tried to hold back a little bit and just go about purchasing makeup, generally speaking, a little bit differently, which is also reflected in the amount of eyeshadow palettes that we're going to talk about this year. Technically, the amount of eyeshadow palettes this year is about twice less because I bought 11 eyeshadow palettes. We are going to talk about 12 because one of them arrived literally on, I want to say, New Year's Day or the first day of the new year. I really can't recall, but I didn't really use it last year to be able to rank it, so I'm going to include it in this year's ranking, even though technically I bought it last year. Just a heads up, if you've never been around my channel before and this is the first video that you're seeing from me, about half of the palettes that I'm going to talk about are Pat McGrath, because this year I have really tried to be more mindful of my purchases and I've really tried to purchase makeup, not just eyeshadow palettes like I mentioned, that excites me, that adds something new to my collection, that really brings me a lot of joy, and not just randomly trying things here and there because I want to try a lot of different things. So this year was much less about trying new things and much more about being a more reasonable, smarter consumer. That doesn't mean that I didn't buy a whole lot of things that I didn't really need, but at this point you and I are all people that don't really need any more makeup in the foreseeable future, and we still keep buying it because it's our hobby and it's something we enjoy. But I was just getting to a point where my eyeshadow palette collection and my makeup collection were getting a little bit out of hand, in the sense that I just didn't have time to enjoy everything that I had, and I would keep like pulling palettes out or makeup items out and feeling like I really love them, but I just don't have the time to spend on them. So this year I really wanted to cut back a little bit and try to purchase only things that I will have the time to enjoy. And I think I more or less managed to do that. But because of that, and because of how much I have enjoyed Pat McGrath's brand this past year, a lot of the makeup that I bought, including eyeshadow palettes, has been from her brand. I think I've rambled enough, and without much further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the ranking. I'm going to do it in an ascending order, so we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. So at the bottom of my list is an eyeshadow palette that, for those of you guys who have been around my channel and have seen my previous video where I talked about best and least favorite makeup that I purchased in 2019, you will know immediately that at the bottom of my list is the Good Sport palette from Colourpop. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this palette. I just wanted to reiterate, for those of you who might not have seen this video, that I do like the quality of this eyeshadow palette. I do like all the individual colors, and I actually do like how they work together, but there's just something about this palette that for some reason doesn't excite me too much to pull it out. I've really been trying recently to like put it a bit more in like the front of my eyeshadow palette so that I pull it out a bit more often, and I might change my mind about it, but as of now this is my least favorite palette that I have purchased this year. Not because it's bad quality, but just because I don't find it as exciting and it doesn't bring me as much joy as the other eyeshadows that I want to show you. At the number 11 we have another Colourpop eyeshadow palette, and coincidentally these two are also the only eyeshadow palettes that I own from Colourpop. I do have quite a few of their Super Shock eyeshadows because I really love those, but when it comes to their like pressed eyeshadows and their eyeshadow palettes, not much has really struck me as unique and something that I absolutely have to own. This year Colourpop went into this spree of releasing monochromatic eyeshadow palettes, and I appreciate the trend. I think it's really cool. I think they listen to their customers who are asking for these sort of monochromatic eyeshadow palettes. I don't think they're super groundbreaking or anything, because a monochromatic eyeshadow palette is about the easiest thing you can think of in terms of an eyeshadow palette, and I feel like they could have put more thought in how they curate the color stories. So while I like this one, for instance, the green eyeshadow palette, I think it is quite well executed in terms of a variety of the different green undertones, because you have the cooler greens, you have the warmer greens, you have the more yellow toned greens, and here you have some of the more olive toned greens. So for a 9 eyeshadow pan palette I feel like this is quite well executed. However, I was never even remotely tempted to buy any of the other monochromatic eyeshadow palettes that they had in this lineup, just because I don't think that all of them were quite well thought through. So I really like it. I'm not going to get rid of it, and I never like to think about decluttering it. But I just don't get like super excited about it. There is another eyeshadow palette with green eyeshadows that I'm going to put much more up in this eyeshadow palette ranking, because I just love it so much more. And now we're getting into the top 10, starting with the number 10 eyeshadow palette that I have purchased this year, and this is the Darkroom palette from Stilazzi in collaboration with Jordan Liberty. I did a special video, you can check it out here, where I talked extensively about why I bought this eyeshadow palette, because I broke some of my overseas purchasing rules in order to get this palette, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I really like Jordan Liberty. Now, I do really like this eyeshadow palette as well. This is an extremely versatile, very well curated, beautifully put together eyeshadow palette which offers you a variety of finishes. The reason I don't find it super exciting is because I really love very complex, very dimensional, very glittery eyeshadows, which is not something you're going to find a lot here. I think the only eyeshadow that I would consider a little bit, you know, more interesting is this duochrome shade over here, which I don't know whether you can see, shifts a little bit between a red and a gold, and it has a bit more sparkle and a bit more dimension to it. So while I really like this eyeshadow palette, and I think it's such a staple, it's the kind of palette that you can always rely on giving you a solid, beautiful look, and there is so much that you can do with it because of all the different tones it has in it. While it is a mostly neutral eyeshadow palette, it offers you enough pops of color to be able to make more interesting looks with it than with a lot of other neutral eyeshadow palettes. The formulas are great, the mattes are a little bit more on the dusty side, but they blend out really easily. The metallic shades are more of like satin metallics, not all of them are like this foiled metallic formula that a lot of us, especially me, really love. They are more subdued, but I think this eyeshadow palette was meant to please everyone and not just, you know, the makeup nerds like me who really love glittery eyeshadows, which is, I think, something that Jordan has definitely achieved, and I congratulate him on making such a well-curated, beautiful and versatile eyeshadow palette. At number 9, I have an eyeshadow palette from a brand that I finally was able to try in 2019, and that is Nabla Cosmetics. I have enjoyed pretty much everything that I bought from Nabla, and I really enjoyed this palette as well. This is the Nabla Soul Blooming palette. It is quite an interesting color story, at least I think it's a very interesting color story, because it offers you a good variety of warm tones, of duochromes, of different finishes. You have this very glittery and chunky, like white copper gold topper over here. You have the two duochromes over here. You have some beautiful metallics. You have a variety of different beautiful transition color mattes to work with, and I think it's a very nicely put together palette. I do find the colors of this to be a little bit more spring and summertime appropriate, which is why I haven't really been pulling it out since the end of the summer, but I'm sure that once spring and summer hit again and I get more into these like coral fun colors, I'm definitely going to pull this palette out again, and I'm really grateful to have it in my collection. I think that in terms of Nabla eyeshadow palettes, this remains the best choice for me because I think it offers the most uniqueness into my personal eyeshadow collection, and I think into most people's personal eyeshadow collection. So a lot of the other Nabla palettes kind of look samey to me, even their newest one, the Dreamy 2. While I think that they have done something to upgrade their metallic eyeshadow formula, and there are some ingredients that I have spotted there that I have also seen in Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes, I still think that a lot of their color stories are quite samey, and this is the only truly unique one that they have in their current eyeshadow palette lineup. And now let's slowly get into the Pat McGrath extravaganza, because as you can imagine, with only 8 palettes left, there's going to be a lot of Pat McGrath. The first eyeshadow palette I wanted to talk about is not a new release from Pat. This is one of her original 6 mini palettes. This is the Mothership Subversive La Vie and Rose, which comes in the, you know, packaging that resembles the Big Subversive palette. I do have the Big Subversive palette. That one was in my ranking from last year. It is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes from Pat. Whoops, let me remove the little plastic protector here so that I can show you the eyeshadows. These 6 pens are very awkward to hold because they have the 2 little flappy things here, but I'm going to do my best to show you the colors in this palette. Deciding whether to buy this palette was a truly agonizing experience because I think I went through at least 2 weeks in August when I was like, add it to my cart, remove it, add it to my cart, remove it. It was the only purchase that I made for the month of August. But in the end, I'm actually happy that I have this palette because one of the reasons I didn't want to buy this palette is because I have this shade here, the shade Pale Fire, in a single. So I had already purchased this in one of the singles when Pat released the Idols in February, and I was like, do I really need 2 of them? But then over the summer I used Pale Fire so much, it's one of my favorite like single eyeshadows of all time, that I figured I don't actually mind having 2 of them because I basically take it with me when I travel. If I'm in a hurry, it's the only eyeshadow that I think of to quickly swipe on my lids and call it a day. There are very few eyeshadows that I'm like, oh god, I don't have time, what am I going to do? Pale Fire. So because of that, I didn't really mind having a second Pale Fire, and I do actually really enjoy the colors in here. This purple is one of the most stunning purples that I have ever seen. It is so rich and so vibrant, and it just goes on forever. It makes for the most beautiful liner if you just want to have like a beautiful purple liner. I know Mother Pat loves her golds, but this gold in the La Vie en Rose palette is just, I don't know, can you see how beautifully reflective, metallic, almost creamy feeling this is? And it has this beautiful color of like burnished honey. I absolutely love it. At number 7 we have the Blitz Astral Quad in Nocturnal Nirvana, which is part of Pat McGrath's Opulence collection for Holidays 2019. You're probably surprised to see the eyeshadow palette quad with the blue, the green and the purple at the bottom of the list. But I have reasons for it, okay? I have reasons. Now, don't get me wrong, this purpley green shifter over here is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in an eyeshadow. Not gonna lie, it is stunning. Look at it. Stunner. I just love it so much. I do really like the purple and the blue as well. The blue actually works really well layered over other eyeshadows. I have it a little bit on the center of my lids layered over top of Lapis Luxury. The purple is stunning. It has this beautiful like micro like purpley pink glitters to it that you see only when you're in artificial light, and it looks beautiful. The thing I don't like about this quad and that really irritates me is the stupid gold. It's a beautiful gold, but I don't feel like it belongs in this quad. Yes, it works with the purple, it sort of works with the blue, but it absolutely doesn't work with this green, and it's just, okay Pat, we get it, you like gold, but enough with the gold. Do you know how much more beautiful and exciting this quad would have been if this eyeshadow was like a white green flip, like one of those astral shades, but like with a white base and like greenish glitter to it? That would have been splendid. I would have loved it. I would have been all over it. But as it is, because of this gold, this palette kind of goes down in the ranking for me. At number 6 we finally move into one of the big mothership palettes from Pat McGrath, and this is the Divine Rose palette. While this is not my favorite color story from Pat, and I don't love this palette as much as I love my other Pat McGrath palettes, I'm still really happy to have this, because honestly I think this is one of the most interesting, unique color stories that we've seen on the market in a while. It is a very beautiful take on warm toned and cool toned neutral eyeshadows. It is very appropriate for everyday looks, so for those of you who have always been intimidated by Pat's other eyeshadow palettes, the big mothership palettes, because they contain a lot of like striking colors, very difficult to incorporate into daily looks colors. This is an eyeshadow palette that everyone can use. It is so approachable and so easy to use, which is why I don't believe it's going to be super limited edition. I did talk a little bit about the whole release of this eyeshadow palette in my review video, which you can check out in the cards here, and my personal feeling is that just something was very off with the release of this palette, either because Selfridges fucked up and released it much prior to its original release date, or I don't fucking know what's going on. But I don't for a second believe that this eyeshadow palette is not going to come back. So for all of you who are really sad that you missed out on it, I don't really think you've missed out on it. I just think it's going to come back later in 2020, like spring 2020 or something like that. At number 5 we have another quad from the Opulence collection from Pat McGrath, and this is the Ritualistic Rose quad. I really love this quad. This is such a unique take on like only 4 colors, and it's so different also for even for Pat McGrath's lineup and for the way she combines colors. I really love this. This is the epitome of a feminine ethereal color story. There's just something very girly about this, and I really, really love this. This eyeshadow in particular is so stunning. It is such a gorgeous, like, bronzy purple shade. I really like it. This shade is definitely one of my favorites from the Opulence collection. I really, really love it. I love it even more than this one. So the rose gold duochrome is really pretty and really reflective. However, I wish the pink was a little bit stronger than it is, because when you apply it on the lid, you see the gold coming out a little bit more strongly, and you really have to work to make the pink show up a little bit better. But with that being said, I really love this color story. I really love this quad. At the number 4, we have my favorite of the Astral quads that were released by Pat McGrath for Holidays 2019, and that is the iconic Illumination quad. For those of you who are familiar with my makeup style, you're probably quite shocked that this is the one that I enjoy the most. Quite frankly, I'm shocked as well. I really don't know what it is about this quad that I like so much, but for some reason I find myself using it a lot, very often. And I just think like all the shades are really pretty, they work really well together. I really like these like baked topper shades that she has that work really well on the lid, they work really well blended out, and for some reason I really am enjoying this stunning topper shade, which is like, it looks like the most boring champagne gold shade, and yet it works wonders when you put it on your eyelids. There's just something very classy about this quad. Whenever I use it, I feel really, really well put together, and I don't know. I know it looks like a super boring color story, but for some reason I'm really enjoying it. So at number 4 we have Iconic Illumination, and now we can get into the top 3 where, to everyone's joy, it's not just Pat McGrath. So at number 3 we have the palette that I was talking about in the beginning of the video when I mentioned that I bought this last year, but technically I'm ranking it in this year's video because I didn't actually use it until this year, and this is the Tribe palette from Juvia's Place. The ways in which I love this eyeshadow palette. If you know anything about me and about the way I combine colors, I really like combining contrasting colors, and green and orange happen to be one of my favorite color combinations of all time. Thank you, Juvia's Place, for finally putting together a cohesive color story and making it green and orange. I think Juvia's Place has really been working on making their color stories a little bit less random and a bit more curated and put together, and this is an excellent step in this direction. I just love every single shade in here. I don't really know what to say about it. This green makes for the most beautiful liner. It just blends out so beautifully in your outer corners. These two metallic shades are just so stunning. So stunning. Look at them. This metallic forest green is gorgeous, and this shade in particular just... oh, this requires a standing ovation. It is so beautiful. This is one of my favorite shadows to wear from this palette. At number 2 we have one of the most beautiful eyeshadow palettes in my collection, and one that I just cannot get enough of, and that is the Smoke Sessions palette from Melt Cosmetics. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there is an eyeshadow palette, a green eyeshadow palette in my collection that I enjoy much more than the Just My Luck from Colourpop, and this is the one. There is just nothing I can say about this eyeshadow palette that is negative. I just think it's such a beautiful take on the color green, because you have the beautiful cooler toned greens, you have the gorgeous olive tinged greens, you have the gold shade over here. Just such a beautiful, compact, well put together story with gorgeous quality of the eyeshadows. I've talked about this eyeshadow palette before, so I'm not going to spend too much time raving about it, but if you've never tried Melt Cosmetics, I think this is probably, and you'll enjoy really punchy metallic formulas, I think this is the eyeshadow palette, provided of course green is one of your favorite colors. If it's not, then of course don't go for it. Alright you guys, and to no one's surprise, the Midnight Sun palette from Pat McGrath takes the spotlight this year. This is my number 1 eyeshadow palette of 2019 for a variety of reasons. First of all, because it was my favorite Pat McGrath purchase that I have made this year. I was so happy when she finally released another Mothership palette. I had been waiting for this since the end of last year, because she released Bronze Seduction, which was her previous eyeshadow palette in like the big Mothership line in the fall of 2018, and then it took a full year before she released this palette. I know she's gone a little bit crazy with the releases, but at that point I was so excited to finally have a new palette from Pat McGrath, and I really love the color story actually. I think it's such a versatile color story, you can do so much with it, you get such a variety of different tones, you have this gorgeous olive green, you have this beautiful purple, you have this absolutely stunning bronzy orange shade here. The topper shade in here is really beautiful. I really love the two mattes. I'm really happy that she didn't put the black and she put this beautiful cool toned brown. I don't know. I just really like this color story. I use this palette quite a lot on its own. I use it together with other palettes from Pat McGrath, and I've just been enjoying every single minute of it. I don't know whether you can see that I've already like had quite a lot of wear on some of these eyeshadows, and like I said, I've only owned it since September. So, to end this video on a really high note, we have the Midnight Sun palette from Pat McGrath at number 1. And with this, we're going to wrap up this video, you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what were your top 3 eyeshadow palettes that you purchased this year. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this eyeshadow palette ranking video, and I will see you next year for more makeup chat. Bye!